Well, hey YouTube, today we're going to do a product review. We're going to do a product review of the California folding camp stove, made about 1914 by the Combination Stove Company of Los Angeles, California. The story behind this stove, how I got this stove, is I got it in a trade with James Bender. I had some stuff in my collection that I said, I would like your stove. Would you like to have this? He said, yes, I would. And now we're both happy. We're going to treat this as a product review. And I will tell you the purpose for which I bought this. Number one, it's a classic camping collectible. It's an important piece. It's an important artifact. But being as how it's a metal artifact that is intended to be used with a fire in it, I don't feel really bad about using it that way, and I want to be able to use it in the field. So we're going to talk about the stove, how to set it up, and then what kind of stove it is. Okay, my impressions of how this stove can be used, or stoves like it. All right, what we're going to learn right now is how to set it up. Let's listen to an old man play with a stove in the woods. Step one is going to be to identify a place where you want to put your dang stove. Now, I got to dig a hole. And I picked a spot that has a slight depression. As a matter of fact, it looks as if this may have been a fire pit at one time before. So I'm going to put my stove right here. Be a little bit easier. Hole's half dug for me. Let's take it out. And get the initial stove put together. Got a little bar across here. And then there's a couple little hooks. We'll get some close-ups of that here in a second. Couple little hooks to hook it in place. Now your stove is constructed. The back of the stove, the rear of the stove, is this triangular opening here where the stovepipe is going to go. Okay, this is how you load it. Now we're going to set our stove down on our proposed spot. I'm going to come over here. We're going to ask a little bit for some help, and she ain't going to give it. I'm going to come in here, and I'm just going to mark on the ground the limits of the stove. Now, old-time Army cooks would tell you to come in here with a sack of flour and throw flour around the edge of the stove so you could mark it. But I don't want a whole lot of ants hanging around. Okay, so there's the limits of my stove, and I'll set it off to the side. Okay, so here's the outline of our stove, and here is the front. Okay, that's how we're going to load it. What we need is a trench that goes from about a couple inches from the end of the stove and extends about 5 or 6 inches past the front of the stove so that we can load firewood in this way. Okay, now I'm going to dig a trench, and I'm not going to videotape me digging a trench. It just be an old man huffing and puffing and maybe some curse words, so we'll come back after that trench is dug. Okay, our hole is dug. Goes from about here to about here. Take this root out of the way so it's not in the way of feeding the stove. Leave that in there. Okay, let's test it for size. Gotta make sure it's not too big. And there we go. We might need to clean out the front just a little bit, but I think that'll do. Now we got to build a fire. Okay, let's see if we can get this puppy started. Okay, now the goal here is to get these big chunks started, because what we're really trying to do is build a bed of coals and make a home for bigger pieces of wood that will burn for a long while. So we got to let that burn a little bit more, get more involved, burn down some, and then we can chuck one of these on there. Okay, we got those big chunks of mesquite burned down. We got some oak we picked up off the forest floor here. Some big chunks of oak that grows around here that had been in another campfire. So it was already starting. You can see a piece here. So we're starting to get some real good coals here. I've thrown on this pecan log and some punky wood so I can get some smoke out of the punky wood, because the next step is to check and see how well this stovepipe draws. So we set the stove down, and what I've done is this opening is not over the fire. I've created a little space in here for smoke to gather, and that may or may not be a good thing to do. Okay, I'm going to tell you, here's what I don't like about this stove. I hope you can see this. This is not a snap fit. Okay, now that's either because of the age of the stove, or it happened when it was being used last, which may have been 100 years ago. But it's not a snap fit here. Okay, and the only place you can adjust the opening is by squeezing it here in this one spot. It also gets pretty ding-dang hot. So let's see if we can get this in the opening. Okay, I gotta tell you, even though it's October in Texas, we're in the high 90s right now, and sitting in front of a hot stove ain't the best idea I've ever had. We're getting some good flame, and I may just forego the stovepipe. Okay, there you go. Setup is very easy. Okay, it unfolds, it hooks, it stands on the ground. The hardest part is digging the trench so that you have a hole for the coals to gather, and you have some room to feed it and move the coals around. That's a very small area at the end of that for feeding it. Okay, what sets this apart from other stoves, and there are other stoves on the market during this period that are like it. However, the weak point of this stove is the thing that sets it apart from the others. And that is the triangular folding stovepipe. Okay. Well, first off, I mentioned in the video, there's no snap fit. Okay, this thing will do that. Okay, if you move it around at all, okay, it'll just fold itself back up. Okay, the weakest point of it is here at the bottom, where it is supposed to go into that triangular hole on the top of the range. This will not just sit on top of the stove. Okay, you can. It'll last about maybe 5 minutes. Breeze comes by, or you hit it with while you're stirring something or something like that. It'll fall right over. I'll tell you that I purchased this to use in a way for which it was not really intended. Okay, so we'll mention that part of it first, because I was a bit unfair to this stove. My purpose was to see if I could use this at squirrel camp. My chore that I have to do at squirrel camp, the baking, I have to bake 12 mini loaves of bread. Okay, one for each participant at squirrel camp, which will feed them all day long. Damn it, you better eat it. Excuse me. But that takes a while. Okay, that take 3-4 hours, one loaf at a time. Thought maybe I could cut that in half by having 2 ovens. Okay, one would be the tabletop oven that you saw in a video a couple of days ago, and the other was a do-it-yourself affair that somebody put together at some point during the 20th century that I thought I might be able to use. 2 stoves means 6 hours turns into 3. Got it? And because this folds up into such a small and fairly lightweight package, it's lightweight per stove, it weighs 7.5 pounds, it's going to be easier for me to pack in the big steel tent for the trip up to squirrel camp. Last year, I bought my Shepherd stove. Okay, Shepherd stove has its own challenges, but I still was able to bake bread with it. Burned the hell out of the muffins, but I was able to bake bread. But it was too big. It is too big to fit in the truck, or I thought it was too big to fit in the truck. So that was why making that bed of coals was so important to me. Okay, but what we have discovered here is this folding camp stove, and you don't find many. I don't think you're going to find anything like this on the modern market. When you looking at camp stoves or tent stoves on the modern market, it's going to be a box that you fill with wood, and you can either cook on the range, or there's an attached oven. Some even have attached hot water and things like that. But you don't see anything that is just a little box that you set over the top of the fire. That's because this doesn't do anything that a grate or 2 logs close together doesn't do. It's a little too heavy for backpacking, and it's not quite enough for cooking for a large group. Having said that, it will work well for small groups. It does work well as a range. You may have seen the video that we've done making the fruit compote. It's a great range. It'll fill up a lot of stuff. And I didn't try it because I wasn't able to bake bread. We'll tell you about that in a minute. Uh, you could slather butter on a piece of bread, throw it on top of there, and you'll have toast in about 2 seconds. If you don't mind cleaning it afterwards, you could probably make pancakes right on that range. Okay, it is not a superior camping range. A superior camping range would have an eye hole in the middle of it that you could have a plate take off, moderate the amount of heat that is going to be coming out of the stove. Right now, the only way to moderate the heat coming out of the end of the stove is through the stovepipe, which again is substandard. And there is no flue. Okay, there is no way, no flue, no damper in that stovepipe to moderate the amount of hot air that is going up. Okay. But I do intend to use this for weekend camping. Like I said, it doesn't do anything a folding grate would do, but I've got it. And it works. I do have to fiddle with the triangular pipe to get it to fit. Now, I will mention that the people at the Combination Stove Company listen to the complaints I'm sure I am echoing from 100 years ago. Okay, and in 1921 they came out with a patented version of this stove that enhances its use as a range by including a grate that you can grill on and a warming table that you can rotate out, and the folding stovepipe has a hinge and it is permanently attached to the stove. Okay, I am dying to get one of those. If anybody has one of those, I will sell you one of my grandchildren in exchange. Well, I probably shouldn't do that because my grandchildren probably gonna watch this video. Sorry, sweetie. I love you. I won't keep you. I would like to get one of these stoves. Okay. Now, as far as using it as something to put a baker on, I think I probably could have used the 1930s stovetop oven on top of it. I was getting a reading on the thermometer on the end of that. I have used it in a campfire, worked well there. The do-it-yourself thing turned out to be a huge disappointment. The temperature reading was way low. And, well, here's what the bread looked like after about 40 minutes. Okay, that's just a plain unreliable oven. Okay, when it said that it was 350 degrees, but it was probably 300 or under. Okay, and that's because the top of this stove, this stove, especially without the stovepipe on it, will not retain enough heat to transfer it from the top of the range into something up above it. Okay, into a large chamber like that do-it-yourself or common Coleman oven would. Again, I think I could use my little bread pan stovetop oven with it, and I will try that in the future. But I won't be taking this to squirrel camp. I did find some space in the back of the big steel tent for the shepherd stove. I will be bringing that. I will be baking in it. I can use it as a range. It has a good deal more utility than this stove. Okay, as a collectible, good golly gee willikers, what a great piece. Okay, seriously, from 1914. And we're going to tell a little bit more of the history of the stove in another video once we get back from squirrel camp, because there's some interesting history attached to the stove. And we'll tell you that when we get back from squirrel camp. But in the meantime, if you run into a stove like this, buy it. Okay, get it. It's a good piece. And you shouldn't be ashamed or afraid to use anything that is designed as a stove. You shouldn't be afraid to use it as a stove no matter how old it is, unless it is severely damaged. Okay, if it's rusted through or anything like this. This stove is in great shape. I will be able to use it in the future, just not for the purpose in which I intended it. Okay? We'll see you when we get back from squirrel camp. I will be releasing over the next 10 days or so the videos I did on the shepherd stove, so that when we show the video from squirrel camp, you'll be able to see, you'll know something about the stove as you watch me bake and cook with it. Okay? All right? We'll see you down the trail.